Hello, chess fans. In today's video, I am going to share my first Rapid Arena tournament on chess.com. My strategy for this event is to play the London system as white, since it's straightforward and easy to remember. Game 1 starts with e4, e5. Knight to f3, d5. E takes d5. I develop my knight to f6. My opponent plays c4 defending the d5 pawn. I advance my pawns to attack the knight. Knight landed on c3. I develop my bishop to d6. h3. I castled. d3. Rook to e8. Bishop to e3. Knight b to d7. Bishop to e2. We exchanged pawns. Knight to e5. Bishop back to e2. I developed my bishop to f5. My opponent castled. Queen to d7. Knight to d2. Rook to d8. Knight to f3. Bishop to h3, sacrificing my bishop. We exchanged pieces. Queen to h3. f4. Queen takes bishop with check. King to g2. Bishop captures knight to open the e-file. My opponent made a mouse slip and ended up resigning. Game 2 starts with d4, d6. e4. Knight to f6. Knight to c3. g6. h3. Bishop to g7. Knight to f3. Short castle. Bishop to e3. Knight b to d7. Queen to d2. e5. Long castle. We exchanged pawns. c5. Bishop back to e3. Knight to b6. e5. Knight f to d5. We exchanged knights. Queen to a5. King to b2. The bishop moves to e6, skewering my queen and the pawn on a2. Queen to e4. Queen takes a2. King to c1. d5. Queen to d3. Queen to a1 delivering check. King to d2. Queen captures the pawn on b2. I offered a queen trade. Queen to a3. Bishop takes c5. My opponent makes a mouse slip, moving the queen to a1. I exchanged my queen for the two rooks.
A few moments later.
Game 3 starts with d4. Knight to f6. c4. g6. Knight to c3. Bishop to g7. e4. d6. Knight to f3. c5. D takes c5. Queen to a5. Bishop to d2. D takes c5. e5. Knight to g4. Knight to d5. Queen back to d8. Bishop to c3. Castle short. h3. Knight retreats to h6. g3. e6. Knight to e3. Knight to f5. We exchanged knights. Bishop to g2. Bishop to e6. We exchanged queens. Knight to g5. Knight to c6. We exchanged pieces. I advance my rook to d7 to double up on the d-file. f4. Rook a to d8. Bishop to a5, attacking my rook. I responded by moving my rook to b8. b3. Rook to d3. King to f2. Rook to b7. Rook a to d1. Rook to d7. Rook to g1. I took on d1 twice. I captured a few pawns. My opponent resigned. Game 4 starts with d4. d5. Bishop to f4. e6. Knight to f3. Bishop to d6. I retreated my bishop to g3. Knight to f6. Knight b to d2. Castle short. e3. c5. c3. Knight to c6. Queen to c2. b6. e4. D takes e4. Knight takes e4. We exchanged bishops. We exchanged knights. Queen to e4. Bishop to b7. Bishop to d3. g6. Queen to e3. g5. We exchanged pawns. Queen to e4, threatening checkmate. Queen to g7. Long castle. Rook f to d8. Bishop to b5. Knight to a5. Queen to a4. a6. We exchanged rooks. We exchanged pieces. I captured the rook on d8. My opponent resigned. Game 5 starts with e4. e5. Knight to f3. d5. E takes d5. Knight to f6. Bishop to c4. e4. Knight to e5. Bishop to d6. My opponent sacrificed the knight on f7. Short castle. Rook to e8. d3. E takes d3. King to g8. Queen takes d3. h6. Bishop to h4. Knight b to d7. Queen to g6. Knight to e5. We exchanged pieces. I blundered the rook on e8. Bishop to b3. Queen to h4. In this position, can you find the only winning move for white? It's knight to d2 covering the f3 square. Back to the game. c4. Knight to f3 delivering check. G takes f3. Queen captures on h2, delivering checkmate. Thank you so much for watching. We really appreciate your support. Don't forget to subscribe and tap that notification bell so you can stay updated with all our latest content.